name's Ryan. I'm a student here at Harper Adams University. I've just come to the end of my final master's year. I'm from the Isle of Wight. This dissertation has been about understanding what factors on the car affect the vehicle's understeer gradient. The aim of this project is to develop a comprehensive understanding of the factors influencing the handling performance of the R2T. So essentially we've got a matrix of, well, these are the parameters that we know make quite a moderate effect. We're confident that they are making the car behave as we'd expect them to, and they're very short to change. Yeah, we conducted the testing at M-Sport's Evaluation Centre. Rich Milliner very kindly arranged sole use of the track and workshop facilities for 2 days. We measured the acceleration and steering angle data using a Cosworth Bodinia 2. Cosworth Electronics sponsored the project for this equipment. A Bodinia 2 has a whole multitude of functions, so we've only really used a very small number of them, but it has an inbuilt accelerometer. We're also able to use it as the data logger to record the data from the steering potentiometer. In future, we'll be able to, with the damp potentiometers fitted, record suspension deflection data as well. HCI kindly sponsored the project to allow us to build the loom to connect the Bodinia and the peripherals with industry standard wiring, that the equipment can be used in real harsh conditions. Yokohama are the Running the Right Way tyre sponsor, and we used their tyres during our testing. They provided 4 sets of new tyres and specifications as to the optimal running temperatures and the limits at which the tyres would heat cycle. So we were able to, using tyre blankets, ensure that the tyres were at that optimal temperature every time the car went out onto the track, as well as using a thermal camera to monitor them such that we weren't going over that specified limit. The car's fuel level was maintained, was topped up every run for consistent. So a lot of effort was put into removing confounding variables and controlling the test, so which maximised its reliability. With the different ISO standards, there's different procedures to follow. For the steady state procedures, you essentially have one constant, one varied, and one recorded. So that you have steering angle, lateral acceleration, and speed. So it's essentially a choice between which one of those you remain constant and you vary. So our testing had a constant radius of turn, so using M-Sport's skid pad, we were able to use that for our constant radius, and the speed was gradually increased, and the steering angle was measured. So we could see for an increase in lateral acceleration, the required increase in steering angle to give us our understeer gradient, which is the rate of change of steering angle over the rate of change of lateral acceleration. The ISO standard recommends that the accelerometer is placed on the vehicle's centre of gravity. We weren't able to do this, but we followed the alternative suggestions, and the position of the accelerometer relative to the vehicle's centre of gravity has been recorded. So which means that during a simulation, the acceleration can be taken where the Bodinia was rather than at the vehicle's centre of gravity. To measure the vehicle's centre of gravity position, we can put the vehicle on 4 weigh pads, which allows you to work out the longitudinal and lateral position, and then essentially you lift one end of the vehicle and measure the weight at the other, and formulae were derived essentially using trigonometry to work out the height of the centre of gravity from the ground. We set up in M-Sport's workshop in the same way that we would on an event for a service. Each of the team members all had their own roles. We were able to maintain and monitor the tyre temperature based on the recommended optimal temperatures from Yokohama. We conducted a 1 variable at a time parameter sensitivity test. So that's essentially changing one parameter each time so only one. So we were able to identify the effect of just that one parameter on its own. We did multiple runs throughout the testing of just the M Sports base setup, and then every time we had a setup change, the parameter that was just tested went back to the base setup, and the new parameter was changed. So we were able to see the effect of each of those parameters individually. So examples of these parameters are the toe angle, damper settings, so the high speed compression, low speed compression, and the rebound, and also the rear rebound. We also looked at tyre pressures, camber, and the front and rear ride heights. So the parameter sensitivity essentially has a base, high, and a low level. The base for each of those parameters was M Sports base setup, and then the high and the low values would be quite an extreme of the limits of what we would normally set the car to. So that was done so that if there was an effect, it would be quite easily identifiable. Now, it was found that actually just the understeer gradient on its own, just the value was really no use to us. But the graphs that seeing the output of the lateral acceleration alongside the steering angle, as well as that gradient graph, we were really able to see the differences between the setups in its steady state scenario, where it's building up its acceleration and building up that lateral acceleration and its grip essentially, and as well as the point where it loses traction, and then Charlie brings the car back, either has to turn more or lets off the throttle to bring the car back into that radius. But it turned out that some weren't actually that notable. We did the runs clockwise and counterclockwise. So the output of the graphs, we were able to see that going clockwise, the car was able to sustain much greater lateral acceleration than going counterclockwise, and this was consistent over all the runs. Had we not done counterclockwise as well, we wouldn't have had this data. But basically the weight distribution of the car is very even, so potentially not that. There's one theory that there's a slightly longer drive shaft on one side, so slightly less torque, but I really don't think that's it. And potentially it's the preload and the diff could be doing it. But other than that, not really sure why. It may have been that Charlie wasn't able to hold the line as well going counterclockwise, because he would have been trying to look down at it rather than across. But yeah, it was quite interesting to see that. Essentially, it was found that the damper settings, whilst they didn't have the greatest effect compared to the other parameters, they aligned greatly with what was the expected outcome from literature. And their setup change was also only 2 minutes, very, very, very quick setup change. So in a service, when there's only 15 minutes, knowing what parameters can be changed, that we are confident in how changing those parameters will affect the car's performance, and in the shortest time, or in the time available, is very valuable. So knowing that the other parameters, whilst they may make an effect, they might take 10-15 minutes to change. These things have quite a moderate effect, and they only take a couple of minutes, and we're confident that we know what's going to happen when we make those changes. Part of the suggestions for further work is to go and do a full sweep of the damper clicks, as well as using all of the data that's been built up alongside not just the data from the testing, but all of the data of the weighing of all the unsprung suspension components, and measuring the vehicle centre of gravity, and all of the scan geometry of all of the suspension components as well that's been put into SolidWorks as assembly, and taking all of that data and building a simulation from it, and using the data that we've collected and the data that we're confident in to validate the simulation model.
Absolutely loved it, yeah. Well, that's strange. Whatever it says on the whiteboard.